The 15-Point Plan is part of the Win, Make, Give podcast network.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast, the 15-Point Plan podcast. I'm your host, Jacqueline Smith, and I'm here with my amazing business partner, friend, and co-host, Ryan Greigg. Say hi, Ryan.
Hello, everybody. Your favorite podcast, Jacqueline. Dang right.
Yeah. So we've been on this journey, the 15-Point Plan. The whole point of it is to help you have more energy for the things that matter in your life, to have more happiness, less stress, more fulfillment, more alignment. And we love having a system in real estate. A lot of us are in real estate. We have systems for everything. We have systems for following up with clients. We have systems. If you have kids, you have systems for how you get them ready for school and make their lunches. And this is a system to protect the most important investment, that's you, and a system to manage your energy. So we've been talking a lot about how different habits impact our energy, different protocols, and really this idea of your energy is your edge. And in business, we know that early on in this series, we read a stat that 89% of business owners report energy as being their number one constraint. And so we know that energy directly drives revenue, resilience. It drives so much of our success or our lack of success in business. Fatigue costs us money, essentially, is this idea. And not that it's all about money, because it also, I think, costs us relationships. It costs us opportunities. It costs us things that, are really important to us, that are even outside of monetary things. And so that's what we're talking about today, is just this idea of how these habits, if we're not doing them, how it does actually really cost us, whether it's a relationship or financial. Ryan, you have some stats that you're going to share with us.
Jacqueline, I love the fact that you point that out, because I was just going to jump into these business stats, and those are powerful. And yes, of course, we need money to live in our lives, but worse than like these bad decisions costing us money financially, what about when these bad decisions or lack of energy or high level of fatigue just cost us the people in our lives?
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point that you pointed out. And for me, I think, gosh, how many times do I go home at the end of the day and I'm fatigued, I'm tired, and now I don't want to spend time with my loved ones. I just want to lump out on that log like you talk about. And so I think it's really, really important as we dive into the numbers on income and lack of business that we'd also remind ourselves, none of that stuff really matters if we're sitting there alone.
Right. True.
Yeah. So I think the biggest impact on fatigue in our lives is how it impacts the loved ones around us. But considering the fact that we are real estate professionals and this is a business podcast in a lot of ways, in addition to health, it is important to see what these numbers look like, Jacqueline. And when we find out that a lot of money is often left on the table when it comes to negotiating, if we're fatigued and if we're coming from a place where we just don't have the energy. In fact, they say like 18 to 27% of deals have worse outcomes when the negotiators are fatigued. And I think about like a real estate professional at the end of the day, like you're trying to negotiate multiple offers and you got hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line representing for your clients. And all you're thinking about is, dude, I'm freaking starving and like, I'm tired. Like, just take this offer. I don't care. That's not the best interest of our clients, right?
Well, not only that, but usually you're not even actually aware that you're hungry. Like, think about, at least, I mean, I might know I'm hungry, but I don't know I'm hangry. So like, I will like fight you in that moment that I'm being logical and sound and regulated, when really my husband's like, you need to go eat a protein bar, girl. And so you don't know that you're reacting poorly or handling things poorly when you are. Like, in our episode, we talked about hydration and the 2%, if you're 2% dehydrated, like the massive impact that has on your cognitive performance. And so but you don't even know that you're dehydrated when you're only 2%. So when you're lacking energy and you're sleep deprived and all of that, like you're going about your day, a lot of us are just like on autopilot, and you actually don't necessarily, it doesn't register that you're not like operating at peak or even at baseline at that point. So to me, these things are super motivating. And if you weren't motivated by like not getting Alzheimer's or living longer or any of the other stats that we've shared over the past, like what, 7 or 8 weeks here, like maybe you will be motivated by the loss of revenue because it's significant, isn't it? Like on a $2 million deal, that would be like, I don't know, $400,000 or $500,000 left on the table.
Oh, I mean, gosh, yeah, that level of deal, right? A couple $1 million deal. If you're looking at 18 to 27%, that is hundreds of thousands of dollars that we
Yeah.
just left on the table because we're fatigued, because we're a little bit tired. And so what we know, Jacqueline, is that, yeah, our energy absolutely represents who we are, how we show up, how we influence others,
Mm-hmm.
how we inspire others, and how we make these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at how it affects those around us, there's this interesting thing that happens with our energy, and it's called neurological mirroring.
Mm.
And I think this is really, really important for anybody who's in the business world to think about if they lead any type of meeting, but also, like we said, with our people. I think this is 100% applicable to how we walk in the room with our family when we go home at night. So this thing called neurological mirroring is like when a leader or a parent walks into a room, everybody's nervous systems are impacted by it. And those people in that room, they're going to feed off, they're going to pick up on the energies that that leader is putting out.
Yeah.
And a depleted, anxious leader or parent creates a depleted, anxious culture or child.
Mm-hmm.
But an energized, grounded leader does the opposite. Again, fill in the blank there, or fill in those words or replace those words, creates anxious culture, but also it's creating anxious kids.
Well, I will be transparent in that when I was a young mom, um, I was a single mom and I just did. I was super anxious. I had a lot of anxiety at that time in my life. I was in my like mid 20s, and because I had Nolan when I was 23. And I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, like financial stress and just like overall stress. I was not grounded at that time of my life. And I feel sad to say that he, I can see that in him now. And I
Mm.
know there's like kind of an element of, well, I guess I assume that I wasn't the only one, and that your 20s can kind of be like that as you're like finding your way in the world. Maybe you'll be a little more anxious than when you're like in your 40s and you start to not care about anything what anyone thinks anymore. But I see that I passed that on to him,
Mm.
and now I have to help him manage through that. And so if I could go back in time, that's one thing I would change. Not that we have regrets in life, but if I could have a magic wand.
And it's not too late, right? Like you can work on those things together. And last episode or 2 episodes ago, you talked about being the thermostat.
Hmm.
That's what I think of when I think of this. Like when we, as leaders or parents or people that we want to be influential, we have to keep in mind how we show up is 100% contagious
Yeah.
with our team, with our people around us, with our community, and again with our kids. And I really, and it's taken me a long time, but I really focus on that, Jacqueline, of like closing that circle from work, coming home, taking a breath, and then being like, it's all about the family now. It's all about the kids now.
Yeah. Another stat that I thought was really interesting was that there's a 40% decrease in emotional cue detection when you're underslept. So I think about, even like you're talking about going home to your family. So if you didn't sleep and then you went and you worked all day, and sure, you got through the work day, but then you come home and let's say your son, had a bad day, and he really wanted to talk to you about it when you got home, but then he saw that you were like stressed and tired, so he decided not to, and you didn't see the cue. You missed it because you're just exhausted and tired and depleted, and you missed the fact that he actually was coming up to talk to you, maybe with a paper in his hand or something that he wanted to show you. And And we do this like with our families, and we do this in business too, where like you and I, we're going on appointments with potential clients or with our clients to talk them through the biggest transaction of their life in real estate. And we might miss important cues that are really necessary for us to serve people at the highest level, because not everyone verbalizes every little thing unless they're, unless we kind of dig it out of them sometimes.
Another really good point. 40% emotional cue detection when underslept. In other words, like you're just missing people's emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Jacqueline, have you seen? There's a video that was going around a while ago. You know who Theo Vaughn is by chance, the comedian? And okay, so you probably don't. You probably haven't seen this video. I'm going to send it to you. He's his name is Theo Vaughn. He's incredibly hilarious. He's a comedian, but he's also like this kind of like country dude that like gets into his country philosophical talks. And he does a podcast. And he had a mixed martial artist named Sean Strickland on the podcast. Probably haven't heard of him either, right? Because I hadn't. But here's where I'm going with this, Jacqueline. It was really interesting because Theo's talking with Sean, a country kind of good old boy, and Sean Strickland is like this mixed martial art, like burly fighter dude. And Sean starts sitting there and he starts talking about when he was a kid and why he started fighting and how, like, basically his father was very violent with him. And Theo does the most amazing thing where he sees Sean's hand shaking just slightly and he recognizes that emotional cue. And he says something to him, and Sean, this burly fighter guy, starts shaking his hand a little bit more. And Theo recognizes that emotional cue, and then he makes a joke, and Sean doesn't even laugh. And Theo instantly recognizes Sean is going back into that place where he was a child, and he's really, really becoming vulnerable. And Theo says the most incredible thing. He says, "Hey, man, we don't have to talk about anything. We can just sit here." And Sean just starts crying. And he's just crying and crying, and Theo just sits there with him. These two like burly dudes. And then there's a video about the video, and they break that whole thing down as to how most people every day are missing these little emotional cues where somebody could so badly need our help, and just like they want to share with us, but we're just so busy, or we're tired, or we're sleep deprived. And like imagine when our kids do that to us, or
Yeah.
imagine when somebody like they have a hard time or they have something really exciting and they just want to talk about it, but we're just buzzing through our day and we're just so tired now, like we don't even care. And they made just this emotional cue where they lit up in excitement, wanting to tell us something, and we just shut them down. Or they were on the verge of crying and we're like, "How's your day?" And they're like, "It's not very good." "Oh, cool. Did you see this thing on social media?" And we just ignore it. We just completely ignore it. So I think this is like really powerful to realize, man, when my energy is low, how many things in my life am I missing out on?
Yeah. It's significant. I mean, we have like these stats that are all related to business, but you and I keep gravitating towards like, yeah, so what? Like imagine the impacts on our kids and our spouse. But like one stat is energized leaders retain like their employees or their teams like 2.8, so almost 3 times longer than people who are deficient in energy. So even just applying that to your friendships, like your relationships in your life. Like if you meet someone, I think it was on the last episode, I said, like, this stuff costs us opportunities too, And so if you think about it, you're out there meeting people all the time. And if you're kind of lumping on a log, but you're on autopilot through your day and you're just kind of like in survival mode, like you could meet someone that could be super significant in your life, like in the grocery store lineup or at, the restaurant you're sitting at the table next to you. And because you're just not really like fully alive and awake, you're missing these connection opportunities, even with people you don't know. And so I just think energy is so important. Obviously, we believe that because we're doing this podcast, but it impacts like performance on so many different levels. And we were going to talk about like our evening decisions because that impacts so much our sleep, right? Like they say that a good night's sleep starts hours before you hit the pillow.
Yeah, definitely. And thankfully, sleep is on our 15-point plan. So we've talked a good amount about sleep. We've talked about Brendan Burchard's 3-2-1 sleep, but this talks about a good breakdown for the day,
Yeah.
of kind of like your peak hours being between 7 and 11 a.m. You got high glucose, high cortisol, like you still have a lot of energy. This is a good time to make big decisions. This is a good time to do your money making activities, that 7 till 11 a.m. time. And then you're in like a good zone from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m. And this is a dangerous time though, because this is often lunch. Our cortisol starts declining, but it's fairly stable. This is a good time to recap, a good time for meetings, as long as they're not too long, making your phone calls. But then it can go pretty downhill pretty quickly from there, right, Jacqueline? What happens after that?
So they say between 2 and 4, it's like your lowest time. It's post lunch glucose dip, fatigue peak, decision quality bottoms out. And this is a good time just to do like administrative tasks, emails, routine work, as opposed to something that requires like more a higher level of engagement, cognitively or socially. And then from 4 to 6, that's like a recovery time. So you get this like natural second wind if you are recovered. It's great for creative work, brainstorming, planning, but again, not for major decisions. So you want to keep your major decisions for the hours between 7 and 11 in the morning, like you said. Um, and then collaborative, and then administrative, and then so you can kind of see like you're winding down, right? When you're doing those 2 to 4 p.m. administrative stuff, and then you're recovering. For us as real estate agents, it is kind of a tricky thing because we're going on appointments,
Yeah.
a lot of times in the evening, which is good because it says that you can get your second wind if you're
Mhm.
recovered. So if you're not taking time to recover throughout your day, you're probably going on these appointments depleted. And then that's where you're going to do that 40% miss on the emotional cues. You're
Big time.
probably going to perform, um, uh, have a lower level of performance when you're going on these important appointments.
Well, and like you're just not going to care as much. As we said in the very beginning,
Yeah.
like we don't have the energy to care. And one thing that you can look at is like these studies of big decisions that were made at the end of the day. They've done studies on judges, but there was an Israeli parole board study, and they said there was a 65% approval rate in the morning.
Hmm.
65% approval rate in the morning, but it was near 0% just before the breaks because energy and glucose levels predicted rulings more powerfully than the evidence presented. And what that means is they're like, dude, get me out of here. I'm freaking hungry. I don't care about this result anymore. Just get me out of here. I'm tired. I'm hungry. And I don't know if they did the crime or not, but just whatever gets me out of here the quickest. Let's
Yeah,
go with that.
seriously. So we hope this helps you think of your energy more seriously. I was already convinced because for me, like getting Alzheimer's and living longer, like I don't want to get Alzheimer's and I want to live as long as I can healthily. But if that didn't motivate you, hopefully today's episode did. Next episode, we're going to talk about energy enemies. So you're going to want to tune in for that one. Remember, we release these every Tuesday. So put a note in your calendar, and always we love if you would share this podcast with someone that you care about. I don't think there's a ton of podcasts out there talking about this stuff, and so I think it deserves more of a platform. And so share this episode with someone that you care about. Share this podcast. You can find Ryan and I on Instagram, Jacqueline Ray Smith and Ryan Park Greigg. And check out all of our other podcasts that are part of our WinMate Give podcast network on winmategive.com. We will catch you on the next episode. Remember, Energy Enemies coming out next week.
That's right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.